Hello, my name is Zanete and I am the designer behind Zanete Knits, and welcome to another one of my pattern deep dives. This time we'll talk about a cuff down sock pattern called Porto Memory Socks. It is the 7th addition to the Memory Socks series and it's inspired by our trip to Porto in Portugal. And in this video I'll cover the inspiration, the gauge, the needles and the yarn I've used, the sizing of the pattern, the construction and techniques used, as well as some possible modifications. So our trip to Portugal was late last year. It was the 4 girls going on a city break weekend, but because all of us are knitters and we have a tradition of visiting yarn related things wherever we go and pick up a bit of sock yarn and make matching socks, that's what we did in Portugal as well. I chose to use the Reiki sock yarn as the main color. I believe the colorway is called Almond, and I paired that with Malabrigo sock in colorway Primavera. And I was really inspired by everything in Portugal and Porto, but most vividly I remember the tiles that we saw everywhere. They were on the walls of houses, they were on the floors, and they were sold as souvenirs in souvenir shops as well. Most of them were intricately designed and you could see really a lot of care has gone into each of the tiles, and they represented something for everyone. So in this pattern I've tried to fuse some of the patterns that I remembered most and put them on a sock in this all over color work sock pattern that the Porto Memory Socks are. The gauge of the project is 32 stitches times 40 rounds in 10 by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. And to get that gauge, I had to use the 2.25 millimeter, that is US size 1 needle. If you are a tighter knitter, you might have to go a size up, but whatever gets the gauge is the right needles to use. The pattern comes in 3 sizes, and it's determined by the foot circumference because the length of the foot and the leg are easily adjustable. So the smallest circumference is 17.5 centimeters, going up to 22.5, and in inches that's 7 to 9 inches. I haven't got the sock with me, so to talk about the construction, I'm going to use a placeholder sock. That is actually the previous sock pattern in the series called Vida Memory Socks, but the construction is really similar, and this is plain, so you're not going to be distracted when I talk you through the construction. It's a cuff down sock, and we start at the cuff and cast on using your preferred cast on. I've used the long tail cast on, and then we work the cuff in a 2x2 rib. Once we join the contrast color, we work all the way down to the top of heel flap, and then we switch to working the heel flap flat all the way to the heel turn. And for the Porto Memory Socks, we're working the heel flap in a chessboard pattern. We're still using 2 colors, and that adds not just an interesting detail to the sock, but also extra durability, because the flap and the bottom of the heel are essentially using 2 yarns, so you have 2 strands going through. And we turn the heel, and after that we join in the round. And it's become a tradition for these memory socks to have a sole gusset. That is a gusset that's placed at the center of the sole and not on the sides like you would see in most socks. And it is the same in the Porto Memory Socks as well. But the gusset is worked in the chessboard pattern, whereas the rest of the sock continues the tile inspired colorwork pattern. And once we complete the gusset, it's just straight down to where we begin the toe. This sock is misleading because it's using a round toe. The Porto Memory Socks are using a trapezoid shaped toe, and it's finished with a Kitchener stitch or whatever favorite grafting technique you choose to use. There is color work that needs to be worked on the wrong side, but I've added a tutorial on how to manage that in the easiest way I found. Another point of attention was when we turn the heel and we're creating decreases. Some people noticed that there might be some holes forming along the decrease line, and at the end of this video I've also added a tip on how to deal with that. Some possible modifications: if you're not in the mood for purling color work or working on the wrong side, you're more than welcome to work the heel in the main color only, restarting color work when you join in the round. Another modification that we saw in the test kit was that instead of working a chessboard pattern in the sole gusset, some people chose to continue the tile pattern, and that looks alright as well. And as I mentioned before, it's very easy to adjust the length of the foot or the length of the leg, because the color work pattern is just an 8x8 square that gets repeated over and over again, and you can stop at any time and it won't impact the look. Of course, you can choose to work whatever kind of ribbing, because the stitch count is a multiple of 4, so many various ribbing techniques are applicable, but it's worth noting that you should be casting on rather loosely so that you can get the sock on afterwards. And I believe that's it about the pattern. So if you are interested in more detail on how to work the heel flap and the heel turn, stay and watch this video to the end. If not, thank you so much. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you next time. This is a quick demonstration of how to work the heel flap in Porto memory socks that uses a chessboard pattern on the flap. And I would do it this way. So it tells you to knit the first 2 stitches with main color. For me, the main color is this light one, and the contrast color is the dark one. And from that point, I would start to hold 2 yarns at the same time. I am a continental knitter, so this demonstration is for continental knitters. For throwers, you probably have your own way of working stranded color work that you're comfortable with, but for continental knitters, this is probably the fastest way to work this pattern. Even though I don't typically hold 2 yarns at the same time, I have found that for this stitch pattern it works fine. So once I get to the last 2 stitches of the heel flap on the right side, I will then drop the other yarn as I no longer need it. But it does say that it's recommended to trap the contrast color before the last stitch. So this is how I would do that. Simply twist the yarns and work the last stitch in main color again. So that way the contrast color this stitch won't appear distorted when we start the next contrast color stitch on the next row. So this is how I would do it on the wrong side. And one thing I failed to mention on the previous row is that I am a believer in color dominance. So I make sure that whenever I work the contrast color, the yarn is taken from the bottom, and when I work main color, it's taken from the top. And here it's probably easier to show on the wrong side, to ensure that the contrast color floats always sit below the main color floats. So from the top, from the bottom, from the top, from the bottom, the top and the bottom, top. And once again, I'm here by the last 2 stitches, which means I will purl one and then trap the contrast color like so in preparation for the next row. In the next row, so you can't really see them here, but you can see that all of the contrast color stitches on this in this column are looking just like any other contrast color stitch in the heel flap. So in this row I will start to turn the heel, and we will continue to trap the contrast color stitch before the SSK. So I have less stitches here for demo purposes than are in the pattern, but the concept is the same. So I need to work a couple more, and here I'm about to do the SSK here and decrease. So I will make sure that I am trapping contrast color and then simply work SSK. Okay, now I will work on the wrong side. Slip this one, purl, I have just worked a stitch in main color, and before the purl two together I will trap the contrast color in preparation for next row. And I will work a few more rows and then explain how to deal with a phenomenon, what some people get little holes here between the decrease and the rest of the stitches in the heel turn. And here I have worked the entirety of the heel turn, and I have tried to exaggerate the holes that are forming between the decrease and the rest of the heel flap. But in the test knit, a lot of knitters were complaining about getting holes here, and some of them were fixing it by doing a double stitch or a crochet chain across these. I don't think we need to go that far because you can see that this is forming by stretching the stitches during the decrease, and during the stretch it's borrowing the yarn from the adjacent stitch in the same color. So to fix that, we can simply find the stitch that is next to it and pull the yarn to close the gap, to close the hole. And now it looks like we've destroyed our heel turn, but that's not the case. We will simply fix it by pulling on the other leg, and if there's too much slack still in that stitch, you can always pull the next one a little bit less, which will distribute the yarn more evenly across the stitches, and that should fix the holes on the side. And then after blocking, they'll even out even more. So let's do the same here on this side. This is very sticky yarn. I'm using DK yarn, so it's better visible. But with sock yarn, it's not as sticky, so it's much easier to fix this. And I don't have to. You wouldn't have to pull so hard on it to get the effect. And again, I'm trying to distribute it evenly, and the holes are almost gone, and then with blocking it would close off even more.